Okay, so this is an example that I'm going to go through it. Basically, we are going to write a Java program that behaves in the following way. Imagine the user enters a sequence of multiple events through keyboard, which is basically the standard input, following by the keyword done, which ends the sequence of those events. And then the program is going to record and store all of these events in an appropriate data structure. And then later, the program receives some commands like the ones I have listed: quit, print, happening on, and hosted by. And then after receiving those commands, it has to satisfy the commands or respond to the commands properly, um, based on the list of events that have been given to the program at the beginning. So after the user enters these sequences, the program has to receive commands. Now, let's focus on one element in that sequence, which is one event. For each event, the user has to enter the following information about the event. All of these informations are separated by comma in a single line. So that means what? That means it's like a CSV file where you put multiple cells in a row and you separate them by comma. So it's like you basically pass the event information using CSV, which is comma separated value format. But I didn't want to mention the CSV, but I just wanted to inform you that this kind of formatting is called CSV, right? So here are the detail about each event. Event name, which is a string with no comma. The reason I forced the string to have no comma is because if you have a comma, if you have a comma inside the event name, that's going to be misinterpreted by the program as a comma separating one entity from the next one. So we just assume there's no comma in any of these event properties. So the first one is event name, which is a string. The second one is the start date and time, which is going to be passed in the same exact format that you see here. That means month, has to be 2 digits. Even if it's January or February or March, which is 1, 2, 3, you need to specify it as 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. It should be this way. And then DD, which is basically the day, and quadruple Ys, which represents the year, and then space, space, HH, which is the hour, colon MM, which is the minute, colon SS, which is the seconds, and all of them are going to be 2-digit numbers. Even if they are 1-digit integers, you have to add a leading 0 to make them 2-digit numbers. And then it's going to be either AM or PM. So the existence of AM and PM makes the hour not to exceed 12. So we don't have the hour more than 12, but 13 is not allowed. If you want to put 13, then you can say 1 AM. I'm sorry, 1 PM, right? 13 would be 1 PM. So the hour cannot exceed 12. And after the start date and time, you need to put a comma, because all these entities, all these pieces of information should be separated by comma. Then you need to put end date and time with the same exact format. Then you put another comma and then the host, which is another string with no comma. Comma number of invitees, which is a positive integer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 100, 200, whatever. Comma, the location, which is a string with no comma. And that's it. The location would be the final entry. So that means we need to have a total of 6 entries for every single event. Of course, after the location, you have to see a new line and then another event, right? So the important thing is all the event information has to be given in a single line for one event. And each entry should be separated by comma. So if you have 10 events, you need to have 10 lines of input. And then the 11th line of input should be the word done, which basically ends the sequence of events. After the user enters all the events and then enters the word done on the keyboard and on the system.in stream, the program has to wait for these 3 commands. Quit ends the program. Print will print the list of all events in a certain order. The order is very important to see. The events should be sorted from earliest to latest. That means you need to sort them based on their start date and time. Right? Those events who have the same time, the same start time, should be sorted from longest to shortest. That means if they have the same start date and time, that means there's a tie between their start date and time. You need to print the one that is longer first. That means if the start dates and times are the same, you need to sort them in a decreasing order of end date and time. That means whichever event who has later end date should be printed first. Because if it's like, let's say 2 events have the same start date and time. If one of them has a later end date, that would be the longer event. And based on what you see here, that you need to print them from longest to shortest, you need to print the one with the later end date first. And those events will have the same start and end date. Now imagine 2 events start at the same exact time and end at the same exact time. So we have a tie in this case. What should be the tiebreaker? The second tiebreaker is an alphabetical order of their names. So if the first event is called Halloween and the second event is called Christmas, then Christmas goes before Halloween because Christmas is earlier in the alphabet. And that's pretty much it. We assume that all the event names are unique, so that tiebreaker is good enough. Now, there are two more commands that you need to handle. One is happening on a certain month, day, year, and certain hour, which should print the list of all the events happening on the given date and time in the order that is mentioned before. And in order to do that, you need a very simple search. You have to search through your list of events, and you need to find out which event has a start date that is less than or equal to the given date and time, and has an end date that is greater than or equal than what you see here, the given date and time. So you need to compare the start and end date of all the events with this given date and time and find out which event will cover this time, right? Between their first and between their start and end date and times. So that's a linear search. You can manage that. The last piece is hosted by hostname. So you're given a host name, whatever the host name is, and you need to search for that host name in the list of all the events you have. And those events whose host names matches the given host name should be printed in the order mentioned before, which means, the earliest first, then if they have the same start date, the longest first, if they have the same start and end dates, then the alphabetical letter of their event name would be determining who should be printed first. And that's pretty much it. The last thing you need to remember is that you cannot use any data structure that you like. You need to stick to what's given to you as an advice, which is what you see here. You need to first create a class called event. And in that event, you need to store all of these 6 properties as the instance fields of the event. This class should also implement the comparable of event interface. Comparable is very important in this assignment because, as you have noticed, all the events should be printed in a certain order. So instead of you trying to print them in a certain order manually, you can simply implement this comparable interface, which basically means you need to override a method called compare_to. And in that compare_to method, you need to make sure that these criteria for sorting are satisfied. And when you do that, when you successfully implement the compare_to method, all you need to do is to sort the list of events using collections.sort. And when you do that, then your list of events would be sorted. And then anytime you want to print them, you basically print that sorted list in this order that the assignment asks you to do. It says keep your events in an array list of events, right? So you should not use an array, you must use an array list. And in order to store the start and end dates, you have to use the datetime class that is given on Canvas. I'm going to show you the datetime class, and also today I'm going to show you a little bit more than that. So you can basically do the assignment easier. Let's first briefly look at the datetime. Datetime is a class that looks like this. It's called datetime, which implements comparable. Datetimes are comparable. Why? Because one datetime can be earlier than the other datetime, and that means that the earlier one is less than the later one, right? So basically, datetimes can be sorted in a chronological order, and you can compare them chronologically, and whoever is earlier is less, whoever is later is greater. So the datetime must have these 5 instance fields. We have private date. Date is another class which I have implemented. I'll show you in a second. Private int hour, private int minute, private int seconds, and private boolean AM. This boolean AM is basically true if AM and false if PM. So if the boolean AM is false, that means it's PM. But it's a boolean because AM and PM are only 2 binary choices. So you can just store them in a boolean, not a bigger type. And these are storing the time, and this is the storing the date. I'm going to show you the date first. What is date? Date is another class. Again, it's comparable as well. And the comparable date has 3 instance fields by itself: a day, a month, and a year, right? So it has multiple methods. Let me briefly go over them. You have a toString method, which basically returns a string in the following format. You have the month, the day, and the year. Month, day, and year are all formatted using %02D. By now, you should have seen this way of formatting and placeholders. 0.2D means your decimal integer must have 2 digits or more. If it has less than 2 digits, then you need to pad your integer with some leading zeros to become 2 digits. So the the %02D will print month 11 with 1, and it prints month 7 with 0, 7. It prints month 6 with 0, 6. So that's how it works. Then you have day, which is printed with the same exact placeholder as month, but there should be a slash between the two. And then after that, you have another slash, and then the year, which is basically 4D, right? Because the year needs 4 digits at least. So for example, the January 25th of 2022 is printed as 0125/2022. That's how it works. And we have some getters for the day, for the month, for the year, because these are private, so we need a getter for them. You have a constructor initializing all of them. You have a compare to method, which compares this date with another date. So when you're comparing this with another, you need to first compare them by the year. You may say, why should you start with year? Because among these 3 instance fields, the year is the most important one. So if you have 2 different years between the 2 different dates, the year is the determining factor, which date is earlier, which date is greater, regardless of month and day. You don't need to even look at month and day. So if the years are different, don't look at anything else, just return this.year minus other.year. You may say, why did you do minus operation? The compare to will return a negative number if this is less than other, and returns a positive number if this is greater than other, and returns 0 if this and other are equal. So by subtracting this.year from by subtracting other.year from this.year, you're basically satisfying what compare to needs with only one line. You could have said, let's have an if-else statement. If this.year greater than other.year, return +1. Else, if this.year less than other.year, return -1. Else, the else doesn't happen because we know they're not equal. So we could have done this return with an if-else statement, but that's a very boring, long approach. Just ignore that. Use this instead, right? If the years are the same, then we don't return from this line 28. Then we're gonna proceed to line 29. If the years are equal, then you need to break the tie between them using the month, right? And see if the months are equal or not. If this.month is not equal to other.month, then you need to return the difference between the month. Similar concept as year, right? And if we don't return in line 30, that means you have 2 dates with the same year and the same month. So all you need to do is return the difference between the days, this.day minus other.day. Because this way, when you have 2 dates with the same year and month, the one whose day is less is going to be less. The one whose day is more is going to be more. And if their days are the same, we are returning 0, because if this.day is equal to other.day, this would be 0, right? And that's how you will realize 2 dates are equal. This is the compare to method. I have added this method, which is extremely important when you're error checking and doing exception handling. That's part of the assignment, and there is, if you look at the assignment, you see some points for every entity. This one has some considerable points, the exception handling. So in this assignment, by exception handling is not optional. You must do it, and you will get some credit if you do it, and you will lose credit if you don't do it. As part of that exception handling effort, you need to check whether a date is valid or not. In order to check that, I have created this method for you. It's pretty simple. Given a date, we're gonna check if it's valid or not. Remember, this is public static. This is a static method, which means you don't need to have a date object to call this. You can call it by saying capital D date dot is valid date. And this way you can just check the validity of any given date. It gets a input parameter date, and it checks the validity of it. The first thing we do is we extract the day, month, and year from this state. If the year is negative or it's great, I'm sorry, if the year is negative, I'm sorry, if the year is 0 or less, it's not positive, or the day is not positive, or the month is not positive, or the month is greater than 12, then return false. That's not good because, you know, we have a legal boundaries or legal limits for the day, month, and year. They cannot be 0 or negative. And month cannot be more than 12 because we only have 12 months in a year. And if that doesn't happen, if you don't return false, then we're gonna get to this switch case. You're switching over the month because we're gonna make sure the day has the correct value. Some months are 31 days, some of them are 30 days, some of them are 28 or 29 days, which is basically the February. And then you need to compare day with the length of each month. If the month is January, March, May, July, August, October, or December, they should be less than 31 or equal to. And you need to return this comparison result. They should be less than or equal to 31. If not, then it can be either April, June, September, or November. Then in that case, they should be less than or equal to 30 because these are the months with 30 days. If the month is none of these values, the only remaining value is 2, and that means your month is February. February is tricky because it depends on the year. If it's a leap year, which means if year mod 4 is 0 and year mod 100 is not 0, or if year mod 400 is 0, that's the long formula to realize whether or not your year is a leap year or not. If it's a leap year, then February has 29 days, they should be less than or equal to 29. Otherwise, it should be less than or equal to 28 because in a non-leap year, February has only 28 days. Now that you understand what this method is all about, let's get into the date time. In the date time class, other than these instance fields, we have some methods. The constructor, which initializes all the 5 instance fields, including the AM, the second, the minute, the hour, and the date. The only caveat here is the hour might be 0 or 12, or you know, it might be 12, but even if it's 12, we're gonna store it as 0. You may say, why do you decide to store hour equal to 12 as 0? Why do you want to convert 12 to 0? The reason is it's going to make the comparison easier. Remember, we're going to eventually implement comparable, right? So the hour 12 will not make things easier when you're comparing two times. it would be easier mathematically if you consider hour 12 as 0. So whenever hour is 12, we're going to store 0. If it's not 12, if it's 1, 2, 3, all the way to 11, we store it as is, right? So this question mark basically says, is hour equal to 12? If so, store it at 0. Otherwise, if it's between 0 to 11, just store it as whatever it is. And the rest of them are easy. Just initialize the rest of the instance fields. The toString method is basically returning a string with the format that is specified earlier. I showed you the format. It should be basically the date, which is mm/dd/quadruple-wise. I already have implemented the compare to for, I'm sorry, I already implemented a toString method for date. I showed you in the date class. So that date toString is going to be called implicitly by the JVM in order to convert date into a string %s. After this %s is replaced by the date, then you have a space @ space, and then you have the time in the format of hour, minute, second, and when you're printing the date, when you're printing the time, when you're printing the hour, you're going to do some kind of opposite conversion that I did here. For the sake of printing the string representing the day, the time, hour 0 should be converted to 12. Because hour 0 doesn't really make sense, right? No one calls 12 0, right? When you're storing it, you store 12 as 0 so that it can make the comparison easier. But when you're printing it so that a human being can see it, you convert 0 to 12. So that conversion between 0 and 12 is interesting here. And then after the hour, you have minutes, then second, then based on whether or not it's AM or PM, we are going to use AM or PM. We're going to print AM or PM. The next part of date time would be this public static method is valid date time, which is another helper method that helps you realize whether or not you have an exception. Because when the user tries to enter the start date and time and end date and time of a given event, or even in the command handling phase, when your user wants to say happening on a certain date time, you need to validate that date time. You need to see if that date time is valid or not. In order to do that, you need to use this method. And basically, this method is going to return a Boolean. If it's valid, it's going to return true. If it's false, it's going to return false. The way it works is very simple. We're going to get we're going to extract the date out of the datetime object. Remember, it's a static method, so it gets the datetime as an input parameter, as an explicit input parameter. So you're going to extract the date, extract the hour, extract the minute, extract the second. Don't worry about the AM, PM, because AM or PM does not affect the validity or legality of your date time. Then you got to return this condition. In order for date time to be valid or legal, you need to make sure your date is valid. Hour, minute, and seconds are valid. Hour, how do we know hour is valid or not? Hour should not exceed 13 or exceed 12. It cannot go beyond 12. It cannot be 13, 14. And it has to be non-negative. Hour cannot be negative. Minute, same thing. It cannot be negative and it cannot exceed 59. Minute should be less than 60. Second cannot be negative. Second cannot exceed 59. 60 or more is invalid. So this is all you need to do to check the validity of date and time. Finally, the compare to method, which is a method comparing two date times. If you want to compare two date times, the first thing you need to do is to compare the dates. because if one date is earlier, then time is out of question. Regardless of what time is, the date time with the earlier date is less than a date time with a later date. That's an obvious observation. So first you compare the dates. If the dates of the two date times are different, then you immediately return this date that compared to other date. Now imagine two date times with the same dates. So after line 33, we are going to take care of that situation where you have two date times with two different dates. In that case, you're gonna first check whether or not they are both in the AM or they are both in the PM. If they have different AM, PM, then the one whose AM is true should be less, so return -1. The one whose AM is false, I'm sorry, the one whose AM is true should be less. Because imagine this, if this dot AM is true, then other dot AM would be false. Then this is morning and other is afternoon. So who is larger? Afternoon. So that's why we're returning -1, because -1 means other is greater. When you return a negative number, that means other is greater. The opposite situation, if this .am is false, that means other .am is true because they're different. So if one of them is false, the other one must be true. So this would be afternoon, other would be morning. And this is later than other because afternoon is later than morning. That's why you need to return 1 because this is greater than other. In the case that the dates are the same and the AMs are the same, AM, PMs are the same, so you need to check the hour. If the hours aren't the same, you need to return the hour difference. If the hours are also the same, then you compare the minutes. If the minutes are not the same, return the difference between the minutes. If even the minutes are the same, then you need to compare them by the second. And that's how you compare two dates or two date times. Now, let me show you an example that I have posted as, I guess it was a discussion, or I'm not sure, but yeah, it was a discussion. It was also a quiz. I don't remember which quiz was it, but the last quiz is gonna be, I guess, quiz number 6, which is also a practice quiz for your exam too. Let me look at that. Yeah, in your quiz 6, question 1, I have given you a program that basically is going to receive a sequence of date times, and it's going to check the validity of those date times, and then at the end it's going to sort them and it's going to print them one by one. This is basically what you see on this main function or main method or the main class. We have an array list of date times. You have to when you're taking the quiz, you have to complete this, but I'm already showing it to you, so I'm gonna make your life a little easier. But this is just an example. Let's say you have a bunch of date times. This has nothing to do with the assignment. I'm just trying to give you a sample test, just testing what I just covered. And then at the end, maybe in the next 5-10 minutes, I'm going to briefly show you what you need to do in the real main method. This is not the main method that you need to implement for this program. This is just the test that basically helps you understand what date time does. I'm going to create an array list of date times. I'll call it list. And then in a while loop, while keyboard that has next line, I will basically ask the user to enter the next date time. And when they're finished, they have to press Control D. Control D ends the current standard input stream, and it's going to get you out of the while loop. And if you get out of the while loop, you're basically getting to the last step, which is printing the sorted list of all the date times. In this while loop, after you get a line from user, you're going to tokenize it with a space to make sure you have enough number of tokens. You'd have 4 tokens. Remember the format that we expect from datetime. This is the format. So when your format looks like this, that means you should have 1 token, 2 tokens, 3 tokens, and 4 tokens for the 4 pieces of the datetime when you split it by space. So the tokens should be of length 4, and the second token should be an @ sign, because the second token is an @ sign. And the last token, token 3, should either be AM or PM. Now we have said ignore case because someone wants to capitalize AM or PM, that's fine as well. If none of these happen, if any of these is wrong, that means if this is not an ampersand, or if the last token is neither AM nor PM, we are going to print it's invalid, try again, and we're going to continue the while loop again so that the user can try again. If that's not the case, if we have 4 tokens and the second token is AM @ sign and the last token is AM or PM, we're going to advance to the next step. We are going to tokenize token 0, which is this one, into pieces separated by slash. So the tokenizer is now slash, or the splitter, or the limiter is a slash. And that's going to give us the pieces of a date, which is the month, the day, and the year. And we do the same thing for the time. For the time, which is at token 2, which is the third word of the original line, we need to split the time with colon to get the hour, the minute, and the seconds. If the date token's length and time token's length aren't equal to 3, that means something is wrong. So you can simply say invalid format, try again, and you will do the continue. If the date token and time token has the right amount of tokens, then we are going to try this block and catch all the exceptions that we might catch. And then that would be it. In the try block, I'll try to parse the first element of date using integer.parseInt. That would be my month. Then I'm gonna parse the second token as a day, the third token as a year, and then for the time tokens, the first one should be hour, the second one should be minute, the third one should be second. If any of these parseInt methods cannot parse a token as an integer, they throw an exception, which is number format exception. I'm going to catch it, and I'm going to print invalid format, try again. It's very easy. You have learned how to throw and catch exceptions, so that's how it works. If none of these throw an exception, then we're going to advance to the next step, which is making the datetime using the constructor of datetime. The first parameter should be a date, which is a new date, day, month, and year. The next one would be hour, then minute, then second, the last thing should be a true or false. If tokens 3, which is the last token of the original line, which was this one, is AM, you return true. If it's PM, you return false, right? And that's pretty much how you pass the parameters of the constructor of datetime and create an instance field, an instance or an object of datetime. After you do this, then you're trying to check the validity of datetime. If it's not valid, I showed you this before, then you gotta throw an exception. This exception is what you are supposed to make. It's called datetime invalid exception. I think that's what you had to do for discussion 6. Let me double check. Yeah, actually, it's also in the quiz 6. You have to complete that. But yeah, I put it as a item that you need to do for the discussion forum 6 as well. Anyways, you need to do that. And after you make that exception, which is something like this, you have a public class datetime exception, which extends exception. All you need to do is use an instance field datetime. Let's call it invalid datetime because that's an invalid one. You can initialize that when you're constructing in the constructor. And in the get message, you can simply say illegal datetime, right? Nothing special. That's how you can create your own exception. Exception creation is not a big deal. You just need to extend the original exception class and then probably override the toString or get message or a few other methods that exception has. Most likely get message would be the best choice. Because when you're throwing an exception, that exception carries a message. You can just use get message to retrieve that message, and the constructor is always part of the class, which initializes their instance fields. In this case, you only have one instance field, which is the invalid datetime. And in the main, after you throw the datetime, you're gonna catch it here. And basically you print the message carried by the exception, which basically says like this date is illegal. And then you print try again. Because, remember the message is this, and then you basically ask the user to try again. After you say try again, we're gonna make another while loop iteration. I think I can Alt Control L this. By doing this, I'm gonna fix all the indentations. All right. Finally, after you get out the while loop, you sort it, and then you print out all the date times in order. Let me give you a demo and how it looks like. All right, so let's say my month is 2/13/2022 @ 11:05 a.m. So that was good. Another one, let's say 01/32/2022 at 11:05:18 p.m. It says illegal datetime because January doesn't have 32 days. Let's try again. This time I would say let's do February 29, 2022. And February is not, 22 is not a leap year, so it's going to give me another illegal date. Then I would say, all right, let's do 02 29 2020. 2020 is a leap year, so you should accept that. It did. So I already have two legal dates. One is this, one is this. Let me do the third one. The third one would be January 1st of 2020 at 11:59 p.m. And let's do the last one, 01/01/2020 at 11:59:58 p.m. That's like 1 second before the last one. And then after I'm done, I press Control D. Control D will end this, and it's going to print all the 4 dates in order. This is the earliest date. This is our date time. This is the second earliest date time. This is the third earliest date time, and this is the last earliest date time. These are all in 2020. The last one is in 2022. Some of the dates that were illegal aren't here because they were illegal, so we have to skip them. Remember, if they are illegal, we skip them, but if they are not illegal, we're gonna add them to the data. So if none of these throw an exception, we're gonna add them to the list. What is list? This was an array list. And then you need to do collections.sort list, right? So that's a good demo. I'm gonna refactor this class, and I'm gonna call that demo, right? But I'm going to create another class. I'm gonna call this event organizer, just to show you what you need to do. For the event organizer, this is what you gotta do. I mean, let me grab all of these. And place it here. This is what we're gonna do, right? So first you need to, let's say, use a scanner. It's called a keyboard. And here you need to say, I don't know, please enter the list of all events. Enter done when you finish. And I will say while true, I will simply say a string event or given events equals the keyboard dot next line. Then you need to split it by comma again, as I said before. So say a string bracket event properties that's equal to given event that is split over comma. Then you can say let's create the start date time string. That would be event properties bracket 0. And then do this for end date. Now, similar to what I showed you in the demo, you can basically use this code to tokenize each of the two date times that we have for the event. So each of these should be tokenized in the same way. I will suggest that you create a method called parse datetime strings and parse it there. And if they throw an exception, catch it. And ask the user to try again, right? So that's a reasonable thing to do. If not, then place the code for parsing these here, and it's gonna become a very long main method. But what you need to do is you need to first split this into multiple words separated by a space. And then, you know, each of these should be 4 pieces when you separate them by a space. And then, you know, go back to the demo. Remember how I split that. If there's an error, you should always continue so that you can begin from the beginning and get another line. Okay? So you need to ask the user to try again if these aren't valid start date time strings or end date time strings. But I'm just gonna skip that. After you get all of these, the next one should be, I don't know, the host and then the number of invitees, all of that. You need to get that. Oh, actually, the first one is event name. So let's fix that. This is the event name. That should be index 0. This is going to be event property number 1, and this is number 2. And then do the same thing for the rest. At some point, after you make sure all these strings are correct and there's no error, then you need to create an event. You simply say event equals new event, and just you pass the parameters. The parameters are basically, let's say, you pass the event name, etc. You need to pass the start date and time, and everything else, right? Right now, I just want to show you a demo, so I'm just going to create a new class, call it event. This is going to contain all the properties of an event. Of course, one of them is private string event. And then you need to have a constructor called event, where you get a string event. I call it event name. And here you return the event name. I'm sorry, this is the constructor. So you need to say this dot event name equals event. And also the event should implement comparable of event. And of course, you need to have a override public int compared to method, which gets a event other, and you need to compare them based on the start time, end time. I talked about all that before. Probably here I just want to return the event name, or this dot event name dot compared to other dot event name. Of course, this has to be complete. This one based on the way events should be sorted at the end of the program. I just put some placeholder for this. This is not incomplete at all, right? You need to add more instance fields here. For example, start date time and date time, number of invitees, etc. And after you get that event, first of all, you need to make sure none of these create any problem. More importantly, like the number of event properties should be equal to 6. If it's not equal to 6, why 6? Because the question says on the top, it says you need to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If it's not 6, then you need to say something like illegal event entry. Please try again. And all you need to do is continue, right? You must have some of these checks along the line, below this, especially, here when you want to check the start date time entry and end date time entry to make sure everything is correct. If there is absolutely no error with any of the 6 event properties that the user enters, then you create that event. And after you create the event, of course, here you need to add more items to the construct. After you do all of that, then it's time to add this event to the list of all events. You need to create the list here. You need to say, let's have an array list of events. Let's call it list. That's equal to new array list. And then here you simply say list at event. All you need to do is after you get out of the while loop, which is here, you need to say collections.sort the list. That's how you sort. What's wrong with this? Collections. Oh, it is unreachable. Okay, yeah, it's right. I have to also do a check and say if given event that equals ignore case done, because if there's a done, you need to break. And that's it. After you break out of this while loop, then you have this sort operation. And now after you're sorting it, then you create another while loop. You say while true, string command equals, this is basically the command handling phase. This was the input handling phase. In the command handling phase, you get a command using the keyboard neckline. And then all you need to do is parse that string. First of all, if the command is equal to quit, you got a break and that's it. The program ends here. Then if the command that equals ignore case print, then you need to print all the events. I would simply say, do it this way. Say for every event inside the list, print out the event. In order to do that, you need to have a, in the event class, you need to have a override for to a string, and you need to print the event in the way requested, which basically means return a string that formats. The format should be the event name, comma, event start date time, event end date time. Then I forgot the rest of it. What was the rest of it? It's gonna be the host, number of invitees, and location. Host, number of invitee, and then the location. And then you have to have a new line at the end. So the first one would be the event name. The next one should be the start date time. The next one should be the end date time. The next one should be the host, I guess that's what it says. The next one should be the number of invitees. The last one should be the, what was the last one? The location. All right. But, I'm just gonna leave that to you to figure it out. You need to just define all of these. I'm just gonna return the event name for now. And then that's pretty much it. Else, if the command that equals ignore case, it shouldn't be equal now. If it's not print and quit, then it's going to start with happening on or hosted by. Then you say if the command that starts with happening on, then take care of that here. Else if command that starts with hosted by, then you're going to take care of it here. Otherwise, you need to say illegal command. Please try again. And for the happening on and hosted by, you need to write your own code. Basically, I would suggest that you first create that a string date time, and that would be your command dot substring, begin at the index, which is equal to happening on dot length. So whatever the length of happening on is, we're gonna skip all of that and then begin after this. Similar thing for hosted by. So the host, let's call this given date time. This is also given host, and then you need to say whatever the length of hosted by is. I don't want to count it, so I just say hosted by. That length, that becomes your start index, and then you get the rest of it. That would be the host name. And then after you get the given host or given date time, then you need to convert given date time a string to a date time object. Make a for loop I'm just gonna show you that for loop. You need to say for every event inside the event list. Then you need to do the following. Check every event's start date time and end date time. Or I should say compare every event's start date time and end date time with the given date time. If the given date time is greater than or equal to start date time, and the given date time is less than or equal, you don't have to do the comparison, you just need to call the compare to method. To end date time, then print that event. So that's what you need to do, right? And for the host, to check the hosts, it would be a similar code. First of all, make sure that given host has no comma, because it shouldn't have comma. Otherwise, it would be invalid. Then go over the list of all the events and compare every event's host name with the given host. If you found a match, then print that event. And that's it. Just need a for loop in it, right? And otherwise, it's a illegal command. So I hope that this the structure and this skeleton of the main method and also the skeleton of the event class can help you finish the assignment by the due date. And that's it pretty much.
Thank you, Professor.